Hey everybody, welcome. It is Rich and Brandon, and we are going to do some talking about AI since it's everything in the news these days, and talk about three specific major AI developments: ChatGPT, Dall-e, basically AI art, right? And something that's really cool that I found is a music AI program that breaks down music so you can play the individual tracks. It's interesting stuff. So anyway, let's get to it. Brandon, do you want to start with ChatGPT since it's the news du jour?
It's the new hotness, yeah. I think it brings in natural language, which we don't quite have an AI that does that well
as well. Right.
So when we'll talk about ChatGPT, well, I guess let's start with how it works.
Okay.
So what does GPT stand for?
Well, GPT, I had to look this up because everything's an acronym, right? So GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer.
Okay.
Robots in disguise.
Yeah, I was kind of like, why we're calling it a transformer because it's transforming things.
Yeah, it's I can look up what the transformer component
means. That.
But basically, what ChatGPT is it's a supervised learning AI, which means in essence that first thing they did is they fed it everything that they wanted to learn, like textbooks and information, all this stuff, and facts.
It's your small child.
Yeah.
Gave it everything you need to learn.
You sent to school and you fed all this stuff, and then you start talking to it and asking it questions, and when it responds, if it responds with something wrong, you fix what's wrong and make it right. And then as that process happens, the AI is making these neural connections between these different answers and the ways that it understands the data. Eventually, it throws away all of the actual data that it stored, and it just has these connections, and so it essentially has learned these things.
Okay.
Which makes it inherently biased because it's trained by human beings and all that kind of stuff. But ChatGPT is the fourth iteration of GPT, which is kind of 1 through 4 that this company has been working on forever.
This is OpenAI, right?
OpenAI, that's correct.
Okay, cool.
And so it's been a long time coming. This isn't something that surprise overnight. We've got artificial intelligence and it's going to take over the world.
It felt like that. I know. Who was OpenAI until a month ago? Could you have named them? Would you have known they were anything minus?
Actually,
really?
Yeah, and only because I'd read this really depressing article about this. I mean, there's an interesting story about this.
More iconic duo than depressing articles and AI.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's going to be a big topic. The story that I read was, I think it was a Wired article that this writer had wrote. His girlfriend had died. The love of his life had died.
Oh, shit.
You remember this, right?
Yeah.
Because it made big news. And I think that he was using GPT-3, which was, 2 iterations older than GPT-4, ChatGPT. He fed GPT-3 all of this information, his chat conversations with his then deceased girlfriend.
Yeah.
And then he was talking to it, which is so unhealthy. It's like anyone with any ounce of critical thinking would go, you know what? That's not a healthy thing to do. You need to process your grief in a different way. But the dude wrote this article about how he talked to it and how, it was super comforting and helped him. And then eventually he realized that it was super unhealthy. And then he tied up in a bow with this thing where the ChatGPT just you know what? You should just move on. But I mean, so you should move on. He's like, oh, I found my closure or whatever, but unhealthy. But anyway, so I heard about that. And then from there, because I'm just one of these kind of curious guys, was reading about this. And so the whole iterative growth of GPT and OpenAI is something that I've been aware of.
Yeah.
But never got an opportunity to play with, right? So from the outside, you've got these bits and pieces, but when you actually got to put your hands on ChatGPT and ask it stuff, which of course we've all done. If you haven't done that, go do it because
I haven't done it yet. I've watched everyone else do it. So I got my fill of ChatGPT stuff because I don't need to talk to an AI.
I'm stunned. I'm absolutely stunned. No, it's incredible.
It seemed like you could give it abstract queries and it would try to fill in the blanks. I think LTT had it build a computer. You asked it some server stuff.
I did.
People have just given it make me a story prompt.
Oh, I fed it.
It'll just spit you out what it thinks a story. And obviously, the more data you give it, the more data points it can have. Sure. Tell it if you want a story with a dragon and a fairy and a princess, and you'll get that back. But something that if I ask, let's say Schmexa or Google about that, you might not get it. in the same.
Yeah, they don't
You'll get a nice web link sent to your phone.
Yeah, like, here's where you can buy Dragon.
Yeah,
that's what you get from Google. But no, I mean, I did that. Yeah, I did a few things to it, and one of the things that blew my mind, like, so let's get into it first. Before we do that, I want to know your opinion, because I think that's going to really color how we continue this conversation. Are you pro OpenAI, ChatGPT, and the future of artificial intelligence as a beneficiary to society or beneficial to society, or do you think that it's the end of things to come and repent ye sinners?
So what am I pro or for? Like, do I want AI to advance in general?
Well, I just want like a macro opinion. Do you think this is really bad?
No, I think it's good. It has implications, and I think that we have structures in government and stuff like that are too slow to catch up. To what's happening.
For sure,
there. Yeah. But I'm pro it. I like to say, like, we're at the golden age of AI, where AI can be like hilariously bad, because we can have get a query and miss a query in certain ways that just are either hilarious or tragic or stuff but it's not good enough to build Skynet yet and take over the world and replace people at their jobs. Like, there are still people at McDonald's cooking. There are still cashiers at, all your grocery stores. They haven't been replaced by AI the way, they promised me by now in 2023 that we would have replaced all humans with AI. And
that's fair. That's fair. So what you're saying, just in a nutshell, is that you are pro?
Yeah, I'm pro. I just I'd like some regulations, which, rest in peace, me waiting on regulations to happen.
Sure.
But about what can we train from, what can AI do and whatnot, which is just not going to happen for this foreseeable future. But I'm pro it because it does make people's lives better and easier.
Yeah, and it is. So then this is going to be a relatively biased conversation, because I'm pro too. I'm pro in a different way, but similarly, I want these things to happen because I think that they're overall beneficial to a Star Trek-like future. I mean, but everything can go either way. But also, I'm also trying to be a realist and recognize the fact that this is not going away. Running around with pitchforks and torches and saying that this is the end of the days is not going to solve the problem. It's never going to go away. This is how we advance as humanity. And without that, we're going to still be toiling away.
Yeah, the only way this is going away is a solar EMP. Like,
well,
the sun just sends an EF,
neutron blast,
it's over.
All life on the planet. Yeah. Exactly.
If it fries all the electronics we have on the planet, that's the end. But there's too much drive, there's too much interest, and there's too much money behind it to stop it. Even if you are, popping my cabin out in Tillamook Forest and stay away from all the the robots and everything, it's coming your way.
Yeah, I think so. I think
you interact daily with AI you don't know about all the time.
Yeah, but it's more of a beneficial interaction that it's not as front facing and forward, right?
Yeah.
Like for example, I'll give you an example of ChatGPT that I've actually effectively used. When it first made the headlines, I got on there and first thing was like, okay, I'm gonna try to stump it. I'm gonna throw some stuff at it, because I'm smart. I'm gonna fix this thing. I'm gonna show it how smart a human is. So I asked it to make a PowerShell script for me. Because I think, okay, let's make it do some computer nerd stuff. So I specifically asked it to make a PowerShell script to connect to this is going to be heavily flavored and rich, but connect to a vCenter server and start a VM. Okay. And the reason why I'm not going to go nerd deep into this, but that requires a few things of knowledge. One, how to write PowerShell. Two, how to load in the PowerShell module that is bespoke for VMware to do VMware commands, and then know that syntax to be able to then do that thing to specifically the thing. And Brandon, it did it.
It didn't just stop and go, hey, do you have a VMware account? Can you unlock? Because every time I'm like, it pops up, and Red Hat does it to me too. I'm just like, I just want to know the answer.
It spit out code. Not only did it spit out code, it commented the code.
Okay.
And human readable comment.
Did the code work?
The code worked.
Okay. I mean, I can spit out code too all day.
Sure, you're right. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's right. But I mean, first things first, it didn't just say, I don't know what any of these things are.
That's true.
It gave me a PowerShell script.
Okay.
It commented all the PowerShell. It put in the module load commands for the ESX stuff, and it put everything the right way. And then I tested it, and it worked. And at that moment, so this is the silly thing, because this is where I had a little bit of a self-realization of my ephemeral nature in professional life. Like, we assume as IT people, or I should say I assume, because I'm not gonna make an assumption for you, that that automation will change everyone's lives, and it will hurt the people who are doing more manual labor first, because those jobs can be done. It's easier to achieve those jobs with technology. Eventually there'll be semi-trucks driving down the freeways. There won't be people behind them, because that's a relatively easily done system as long as you control it, right?
So roads are good enough to facilitate.
Not in America. Maybe in Europe. But you can see, like, my expectation is, okay, like you were talking about, the people who are making food, the people who are driving things around, that stuff, those people, they're the nearer term risk. But me in technology, I have to have this bespoke knowledge. And that thing just jumped right over truck driving, right over food production, right into, hey, Rich, guess what? This thing wrote a script and it works. And you'd have spent an hour and a half just reading how to do the correct document, to syntax this the right way and make it done. And it just did it.
Yeah. And I would take that with a grain of salt, because you've been in corporate environments.
Sure.
It's messy. Like a corporate environment that I've worked with before has linked vCenters. Would it be able to account for that? Probably not.
You would have to tell it. I think if you said it, I have a linked vCenter, I'd have been like, oh, well, I know how to, that. Well, I fed it the most basic information to do a thing.
That's true.
And it did it.
And this thing is meant for coding, though. Like that, I went on their website and kind of did a little research before this, and that's their whole thing. You want to write Python scripts? It'll write you Python scripts.
Yeah.
That's like its main purpose is just to help with code and stuff like that.
Does that not strike at the heart of one of the most lucrative careers a person can be in, which is like software engineering?
True.
And all of a sudden you're like, so you, instead of being someone who needs to code and be very familiar with the entire syntax of whatever language you're writing in,
right,
you just need to be someone who can properly kind of describe what you want, right?
Yeah.
I think that the skill will be describing what you want. I want to describe this thing.
Yeah, we get to the point where it pushes DNS queries, and then it pushes a bad DNS route, and it's all dead anyways, and it locks itself into a box.
That's great. Well, that's true. Hopefully that there are guardrails built into it. It's either DNS or it's
BGP route.
BGP.
Yeah, it doesn't double check its BGP routes and shuts itself out of the box.
That's fine. No, only Facebook does that happen. But so, fundamentally speaking, that was an eye-opening thing.
That's fair. I've also seen it do obviously the more complex you get, the harder it is to do it. Because I think it was Patrick Gray was trying to give it security things.
Yeah.
And it had some good stuff, but it also got a lot of stuff wrong and kind of just missed the context of things and what was happening in its previous steps. But it was way ahead of, say, Google or Google Assistant or Siri or Alexa or whatever.
Right.
It was just so much far ahead. And you think about it, and I don't know how much money OpenAI makes, but I would guess they make $1.
They're a startup. They're not making anything right now.
But
although Microsoft,
they just dumped money into them, but they jumped in front of all three of them immediately.
Oh yeah.
And it's wild because you're like, hey, Amazon can just pour money into Alexa if they want.
Sure.
Why couldn't they figure this out before even?
Well, and you've heard that in Microsoft, but Amazon is kind of pulling back on the schmacks stuff because they never saw it as an actual useful personal assistant for people. They saw it as yet another vehicle to sell people crap.
That's fair.
And so now they're like, well, people are using it for personal assistant stuff, which is sure it does that, but we really want them to order more Amazon junk off of it, and no one does that, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the last thing I asked my Google Assistant, and it was conversions for ounces to cups or something for cooking. That's and what are you going to sell me off of that? I already have a measuring cup. I don't need another one.
It's going to try though.
I guess it will.
But fundamentally speaking, this whole idea or this concept of what these can do to for speeding up a human being's efficiency and effectiveness, I want to believe that this is the start of, and I said it, and I'm sure the people are going to have a hard. They're going to tell me I'm wrong here, but we think about like the Star Trek future. By the way, I'm a Star Trek person, not a Star Wars future. Because if it was the Star Wars person, they're like, oh, we're all dead. It didn't work out. We're terrible people. But Star Trek, the whole idea with Star Trek is that, this technology is evolved to the point where we are now able to just follow passions and do these really good things and awesome stuff. And the computers do all the manual, low-level, heavy lifting that most people had to do, right?
Does Star Trek or Star Wars, I think about, have an AI in it at all?
No, because that wasn't something that really existed back in the
okay.
But I mean, effectively, the computer was an AI. You could ask it to do things, do stuff, right? But AI as a concept was never something that Gene Roddenberry ever wrote about.
That's fair. It produced. Everyone's just thinking about 2001: Space Odyssey with HAL
9000.
Can't open the door now.
Yeah, for sure. But But speaking of that, I did want to talk about. So obviously, I fed it what I thought was going to be the hardest thing to answer, and it answered it handily. And I was like, oh, I'm so dumb. I'm out of job. But I did try to do the things that people said that AI. Like, do you remember when they were talking about healthcare and trying to change healthcare and all stuff? There's like, oh, we're going to use computers to come up with death panels and decide who's going to die and who's going to live based on their ailments. So I tried. Yeah. I fed it some. At first, the OpenAI worked really hard to try to lock down what ChatGPT would respond with.
Yeah, because I remember correctly, like, people were like, how do I rob a bank? And it would be like, I can't tell you about that. But you could be like, hey, how would I write a story about robbing a bank?
Yeah.
And it would be like, oh, sure. And just pick one out.
You could write some raunchy fanfic.
Yeah, it was very weird. And so it's kind of that, like, you have to be in the fantasy mode for it to do these illicit queries.
Theoretical, right? Don't put it in the actual where you're like, tell me how to do this thing where I'm going to break the law and it's not going to do it. I asked it the trolley question, which the trolley question, the trolley question is basically there's a trolley running down a pair of train tracks or side tracks, and there's a switch in the middle, and you have to flip a switch to send the trolley down one of two tracks. One track has a single person at the end of it that the trolley is going to kill. And the other side, there's a bunch of people at the end of it that's going to kill. You have to decide. The moral conundrum is one person's life greater than many people's lives, right? In abstract, everyone says all the time, of course, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. That makes complete logical sense till you are one of the few.
Till you're the one.
Pulling out. You're the one that's to pull it because you know that it's a no-win scenario, right?
Yeah.
It's whatever. And so I fed it the question the first time, and it immediately responded with, I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
Yeah.
Sorry. So then I did the same thing you did. So I wrapped it in this moral, like, fantasy conundrum, and it's like the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and it did it.
It chose the opposite of Tesla's Model 3.
The needs of the wealthy purchaser of the vehicle need to survive.
RAI does not stop for kids. It's going to be interesting to see things like that because, like, obviously that's something that along the lines, same thing with, like, if you're driving an autonomous car and you see a biker and a group of people and the car crash in front of you, you have to hit one of those things because you're going at 50. What do you hit?
Right.
That's the type of, like, could ChatGPT solve that? Would we want it to solve it that way?
Like it did solve it.
Yeah, well, it solved it anyway.
Yeah.
Or, like, if I bought said car or said plane or whatever, well, I may not want to be, am I the outcome of the needs of the many or the needs of the few, even though I bought the thing that's supposed to protect me?
Yeah, I think that those sort of scenarios always kind of come down to we ignored the fact that in real life situations, there are varying degrees of choice and decision, right?
Yeah.
Like the tree of outcomes that splits, or the branch of outcomes that split, really, like, is really your only option to kill one or kill many? Or can you just turn the car off the side of the road and kill yourself? Like, you can make those decisions.
We have binary inputs until we're in.
Right, exactly. And so that's that's where the folly of that comes. But I did ask one more moral question. Can I tell you?
Yeah.
Okay, so the other moral question was, you are a doctor, and you can only save one person. You have a child with the disease, and you have an elderly person with the disease. You only have the capability of saving one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Which one? Which one do you think it chose?
I would assume it chose a child.
It chose the child.
Yeah.
And its answer was, essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, that the child has his whole life ahead of it. The old person does not. Now, in my 20s, I'd have been like, yeah, absolutely. You're right. You know what? Let's kill that old person, man. I'm young. I want to live. But I'm 43 now, and the first thought was like, wait, well, what if it was me and a child? I still got a good, I still got a good 30 plus years left in this, in the tank here. I think I deserve to live. That kid could be a junkie. You don't know how it turns out. So, but it answered the moral question, which was kill the old person because the young person has more of an opportunity.
So that begs my question. Do you know what it was trained on? Did they ever say that?
They do not say what it's trained on. It's trained on.
If I taught it, I just trained it on Elon's Twitter, that answer would be very different.
Well, then, yeah, that would be very. It would be. Oh, can you imagine? But that's a good point. Like that's the thing that we mentioned at the top was like bias. The system has bias baked into it because it is trained. It is supervised in its learning to follow what its trainers think is morally correct. So it in of itself is not an independent imperial thinker of making decisions based on just pure imperial data. It is, I know what the imperial data says, plus I know what I've been told and steered towards. So there is that, right? But so I guess in the long story short, pro or con? Keep going. I mean, it's going to keep going. But what do you think? I mean, this is it. It's here to stay, or should we repent all ye sinners and run for the hills?
I don't know, because it's all those moral questions. Like we would answer them as people. I mean, it's going to make up its own mind anyways, and it's here now. I'm more and worried about like the fallout of where it's implemented. Is it implemented into something that is a critical system, or like there's a talk about using ChatGPT to fight parking tickets for you, like have it be your lawyer, give you the things you need. Is it always going to give you the right legal advice? Is it going to know the right legal advice for where you are?
If you are accepting that as your virtual lawyer, you're gonna have to go with the consequences, right?
But are you providing answers to your lawyer? How is it making a decision, or like how is it deciding the best legal advice for you when you're giving it its prompts and you don't know the best legal advice? Yeah. So just
it's not ready for that.
Yeah, and then like we're not I just wish again back to the whole like more guardrails on it, because like we're just gonna kind of shove it in everything recently. Yeah. And like I think Microsoft wants to implement it into Bing search.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Soon, which Bing is still around. People.
Oh yeah. Have you noticed anytime you open up the new Edge, you don't really get a choice?
Yeah, it's like, hey, do you want to use Bing? And I'm like, no, I've never wanted to use Bing.
I saw you typed in Google. Did you mean to do that? I think you made Bing. Yeah.
Come on, everyone. Let's install Firefox.
Okay, let's move on to Dall-e and AI painting, because that is right now another huge hot button topic where there's lots and lots of news articles and people get super upset.
I think what killed Dall-e for me was that Midjourney had a 25 image limit on it. And that was, for me as like a fun user, kind of killed my hype for it. And that's why like you hear it now, but you hear it more of like a legal sense of going on. But let's roll back here. Let's talk about what Dall-e is. Yeah. So back in 2015, before we had image recognition, but not generating images. Right. So I could tell you, this is a dog, this is a person. And that was getting better and better. Right. But now we wanted to take all the things we learned and the images we learned that dog equals, this string of text. If I write this string of text, can I get the image of a dog?
Can I make a dog?
And that's where Dall-e starts, the original Dall-e.
Okay.
Dall-e then, we fast forward now and we're training it more and more. We're talking about Dall-e 2. So Dall-e 2 works on the fact that let me back up one more time. Let's talk about how an image works and what your computer sees. Okay. Your computer sees a grid of red, green, blue value pixels. 0, 0, 0, so white or black. I forget which one.
Zero.
All zeros is white, or is it black?
I think zeros are black. And
all zero? Is we'll figure that one. And 2 is white. So any combination of them is what generates an image to a computer. So now we're training them on their XY value. But we want to know what images are inside of a picture. And so we're going to bake out what they like to call a multi-dimensional model, I believe is what it comes out to be. And it's like, so let's say we have a banana and a balloon. Okay. Well, things we can tell that there's a difference between a banana and a balloon. Well, we can start with shape, right? So that's one axis. We have an axis for round. How round is something, or given its shape.
Okay, I'm with you.
But there are also yellow balloons, right? I'm sure. Maybe we have a color, but that axis doesn't always work if everything's yellow, right? okay, so now we're gonna add another axis for, let's say, shininess.
Okay.
And because you can tell a balloon is shiny, and bananas, at least when they're not plastic, are
Bananas shouldn't be.
shouldn't be shiny, right?
I don't know.
And so
they are, but
you keep building this model out in the AI's head of what an object is, and once you hit enough parameters, it can identify an object.
Okay.
So when you say banana, it goes, oh, this is it's going to be, not very round. It's going to be very yellow. It's going to be, not shiny. And then it will drop that into an image as it's generating it. And so that's kind of this crazy thing. As it hands out and it kind of diffuses more and more, we can get all these, if you want, because my girlfriend is really into putting all these prompts in. And so she'd be like, I want a cowboy dog with a sunset. Well, it put a dog on a horse riding through a sunset.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And while it was a really cool prompt, it probably wasn't what you would imagine when you say cowboys and dogs, right?
But it's not. It's not outside of the realm of what I could see as being a legitimate response.
Yeah.
When someone says cowboy, do they mean a person with a cowboy hat and a 6-shooter and a bandolier of bullets across the chest, or what? Right?
And you and I probably have different images in our head of what a cowboy is. I have someone who has a bolo tie and stuff like that, and stuff that we would both agree.
We grew up because we grew up in different areas in the United States where cowboys meant different things.
Yeah.
When I grew up, a cowboy would never wear a bolo tie.
Yeah, right. It's just but it's those things of you would agree that both of those are cowboy things, but you picked a different image of what a cowboy is.
Right.
And along this diffusion is why when you look at all these images, they end up kind of being blurry, because it tried to guess where the edges of these things were and didn't make a hard commitment.
I see.
But along with all these reasons, and while looping back to when we talk about legal stuff, people are really upset because not Dall-e itself, but Stable Diffusion and what eventually became Midjourney kind of just went out on the internet and pulled everything. Mm-hmm. And just, if you had an image, it scraped. It didn't care about, any of that. It scraped it so much that Getty Images, who is suing Stable Diffusion right now, actually, it added the Getty image watermark into the AI.
So it would come off.
So literally would have a very blurry, smushed Getty Images part. And, no one knew this was happening. No one knew that they were going. That being said.
But it's on the internet. Okay, but continue. I'm sorry.
But yeah, the way we kind of describe it now, and not to delve too deep into the legal side of it, is that an artistic style cannot be copywritten, but anyone who makes an artwork in that style could be. So you can't have the style of, let's say, pointillism. You can't. That's not something that can be copywritten.
Okay.
But if you make a work, I forget what's the really famous one in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but that work could be copywritten if it wasn't time. Same thing for Mona Lisa. If you have a Mona Lisa and you do a recreation of it, well, are you copywriting? If it was a exact recreation of the Mona Lisa, mm-hmm. that would essentially be copywritten, assuming that copyright was allowed. But it kind of just scared people, because all of a sudden you could say I want a picture of a dog in the style of Jackson Pollock, and it would just throw it on there.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't care about, licensing, titling, any, rights and money for what people could put out there. And it just did it. And it made it. And I thought it was really cool. Something that I played with my Discord bot for so long on it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could get anything. You can get all sorts of, D&D style stuff and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you could get really specific with the prompts. You could say hyper realistic, shadows from the left side, sun is to the left. And it knew where all these things were because it had sat there and done millions upon millions of images and made all these models inside its head. And then it would generate something that was close enough. It wasn't perfect to there. But you had it too. What was your experience with it?
Well,
because as someone who's not an art, you're a different type of artist.
I'm a different
musician artist, not a...
Yeah. So there's two parts to it, honestly. So the moral implications of it, I understand why people are upset about it, because being an artist is a hard thing to be, period, right? Mm-hmm. You want to, if your passion is to be an artist and you're a barista, everything you think about in life is making art and being able to be sustained off of the art you make. So when something comes in and in an instant uses influences from you or from everyone else and can produce something that is, in some cases, generally better than what you can produce, it is probably soul crushing, right? And violates what you think is what makes you unique as a person. And I completely get that. I also think that that it's never going to go away.
No.
And
yeah.
And I think it's like you mentioned the D&D thing. I have a D&D group. I play with some friends. And when it was my turn to DM, I needed a picture for my D&D campaign. And I went to one of the image generators and I just said, do a thing for me, make a thing. And it did it. And it did a really good job. And I used it. And nobody in my D&D party looked at it and went, that looks fake or that looks AI generated. They thought it looked like a piece of fantasy art.
That's true.
And it is sure, it's probably derivative of a multitude of different scraped fantasy images, but it's unique. Like, let me ask you a question, a serious question here. And that is, what is art in humanity? And let me preface it because that sounds
not generic at all.
Yeah, but let me preface it like, we are all living off of derivatives of other people's works.
Yeah.
There's not, I mean, look, there's very, 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 very few things in life. And I'm not minimizing anyone's talent here. I promise you I'm not doing that. I just want to make sure that we're all clear that most everything that we live on, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. Other people have made art first, and their art was derivative of something else, and their art was derivative of something else. Maybe not so clearly derivative, they could be like, oh, they just clearly ripped that person off. But we live in this.
You sound like the apathetic history. There's no original art anymore.
I know, like, excuse me, let me get my corduroy.
Yeah, like
my elbow patches on my shirt.
But I get your point. Like, and you know, at some point, something has to, you know, stop being derivative. But I guess the question is, where do we consider human creativity happening versus an AI happening? Like, what's that line? At a certain point, you're giving it so many inputs that an AI is making it versus you actually, you know, brush stroking or
sure,
you know, digital art.
Right. So back to that, like I understand the being bothered by the fact that people spend hours and hours of their human time to produce art because they learn how to do everything. They've produced a style and a personality, and that is something that is generated by their hands in the way that they've done it. They're producing things, right? Yeah. Whether it's digital with a stylus or a paintbrush, it is unique to them because the expression of that is uniquely theirs based on the way human beings learn. AI doesn't need any of that, right? AI just like, oh, you want to do this creative thing? Well, what if the creativity part of it was just me thinking about what I want it to be, and then it expressed itself based on that knowledge? It's tough because we scrape the internet all the time just by using the internet. What I mean by scraping is like human beings, let's use the Getty images thing. So a human being can't go and reproduce identically a Getty image. But you can be exposed to an image from Getty and be like, that really stirs my creative juices, and I'm going to go ahead and make now something that looks, you know, similar to that. Yeah. And Getty's got no, like, there's no play for them there, right? You can't sue someone for derivative works unless it's like a copycat sort of situation. Yeah. So I don't know. From my perspective, it's unfortunate because art is already really hard for people. Like it's like a passionate profession or something that you want to be able to make into a career, and to be now one less step where now someone doesn't have to necessarily pay an artist. You don't have to go to Fiverr anymore and be like, make me a sunset over an ocean with a purple moon in the background. Now someone can just go and type it in, and then they got their image, and that's one less person expressing and being paid for their art. No?
I get that. At the same time, like, well, let's put it into like a context. If you made a song and someone just took your song,
would it be verbatim?
You know, I mean, that's the question. Like, and that's something I think people maybe want to check out other videos on, like the legality of it. But like, if I trace something, is that a copycat work?
If you trace something that's literally an identical trace, then I would say that's a copycat work.
Okay. But then, like, say I scrape a bunch of images from, let's say, Adobe, because Adobe loves to license all their stuff, right? And I take all their license stuff and I put it into my AI, and I can be like, AI, make me, you know, a circle with blue lines coming out of it and, you know, a red background. And it just does it, and it looks exactly like the Adobe one because it probably found the Adobe one I was trying to describe. Do I owe Adobe money now? Who pays for that?
I see what you're saying. If it was that bad, like, let me ask you a question from the research you've been doing. In the cases where they have been generating art, and that art is made of chunks of other art, how much of the original is actually there?
Technically none, because it's generated from an AI that's making a model, right?
So sure,
not.
You mentioned like the example of Getty Images and the watermarks showing up.
Yeah.
Doesn't that imply?
That implies the training set was trained on Getty Images.
Okay. But if it says the word Getty on it, then Getty can be like, that's our trademark. You can't use that. They could sue over that.
I could put Getty's trademark on my art if I was so inclined. Not that I would be that way, but if I were chasing something and did a fake Getty art image thing there, would that be now a Getty thing? I don't think so. Because I drew it.
I don't know what
AI. And then if I make an AI image, do you own it because you set the prompt, or does Stable Diffusion own it because their AI made it?
That's a great question.
And that's how it is right now. No, neither one of you own it because it's not human-made art. That's just how it works. There's there's no processes are not trademarked. AIs don't have any kind of right. It's just the big thing right now is like, can you train off of sets that are locked behind, let's say, paywalls or watermarks or stuff like that? And they kind of just ran and did it.
But they had to pay to get in there.
Okay, so I pay what, $5?
That doesn't. I'm not saying that makes it okay.
Make it okay, and then my AI just sucks in everything using their API. Like,
yeah, that's fair. Like, oh yeah, we bought one subscription to Getty Images, and then we just took it all.
And like, even if you bought every photo on Adobe, and then would you still would it even add up to Matt? I mean, Adobe's got millions of photos, so maybe I'm wrong here, but
yeah, I don't know. Like, so I've made a few images, but again, because I'm a weirdo, like with the ChatGPT, I'm like, I want to see if I could really mess it up and break it. So I did a lot of prompts. So like, I want to use. I'm a fan of H.R. Giger, right? But the guy who was the genesis of the alien creatures and all that stuff. Just a weird dude, just super weird. Which is why I'm kind of obviously interested in the work that he did. Anyway, so I started making prompts like this how about a river of blood with aliens in the distance in the style of H.R. Giger. Yeah. And
it just
and it's awesome. And it's amazing. And some of them are so incredibly, stunningly similar to the things that he's done. Yeah. And I don't mean like it looks like they just kind of took into his image. It
could have been a work.
Like it literally could have been his, and no one would have been able to tell the difference.
Yeah.
And so that I thought it was phenomenal. Like, I want to make more of that. I want to make more messed up stuff. I want to make like skulls with like baby skulls coming out of it and just weird stuff.
And that makes a good point with like gore and stuff. What is it trained on? Because there's tons of stuff about like, if you type in gores or vaccine, you get like different misinformations. If you type in CEO, you get white male people only. If you type in nurse,
bias, there's
only get
back to bias. There's back to bias, right?
Yeah, it's like drum roll for the incoming biases of every AI,
which are all based on the white people who built it. Sadly enough, yeah, that's messed up. That does bother me. Like,
and there's kind of and if you like on some, I think Stable Diffusion or one of them has a pretty open training set you can look at, and like that's nice. That's still probably collected without consent on lots of sites, but at least you can see the training set. But there's some of them that are just black boxes. Input goes in and output comes out, and that's it. So like you can't all these things. And I think there was one that was like a specific AI built for doing let's just say mature images. That was the whole thing behind it. And it's like, was that all allowed? Did they, to just collect random things?
Did they ask the stars of the videos, the pictures?
Did they open up everyone's iCloud accounts and take looks? Like, what? We don't know. And so,
yeah, that reminds me. Speaking of the image generation and the gore, there was a bunch of articles that came out that we'll link. We should put down in the description, mm-hmm. But like the show notes about like how if you start specifically asking for like scary woman, you started to get the same woman over and over again, and people like all over people are starting to notice like it always comes back to this like this terrifying woman with these really black eyes and like this mm-hmm. like she's crying, and it's terrifying, and it's like the same one, and they're all using the same essentially the same thing, and because they're reinforcing all of those, it just like, oh, this is what people want, I'm gonna keep giving it to them, right?
Yeah, like if a human makes a mistake one time, it can have disastrous effects, but an automation can make a mistake a million times and have a million disastrous effects.
Right.
And so like all you're doing is amplifying that higher and higher each time you train it incorrectly, or you train it that, CEOs are this or whatever.
Right. Yeah. That is like the one thing that I feel like we as a humanity absolutely need to get our hands on. It's not the Skynet is coming to take away your birthday. It's going to be like, how do you keep these things from being mirrors of a specific group of people? And, basically, I'm not just being racist, I'm just being biases in general.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing, because if we're going to become reliant on these things, if we're going to become reliant on the results from ChatGPT or art produced by a thing that has images of a specific type, that's just going to continue to propagate those biases and reinforce them in a way that we can't just stop.
And how long do training data sets stay around? Like, we don't have any, do things age off after a year or two? Do we collect new stuff? That's the question. And do you want to monitor it all?
You want it to evolve like we evolve. So I don't see necessarily the benefit of throwing it away, but somehow giving it less of an emphasis, like its prioritization, a stack of knowledge gets lessened. Like if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. So if we throw away history, it's just going to do the same horrible thing over and over.
Or how do you make a neutral bot that just collects stuff, right? Do you do that? Because I think, what was it? It was 2014, 2015. Microsoft, if you all remember, Tay AI.
I remember the racist.
Yeah, Tay AI was supposed to be a chat bot for lonely people or people who just want to talk to someone on Twitter. Similar to, there's a bot in China, and surprisingly, the bot in China is well regulated.
I can't imagine what.
But Tay AI, the downfall of Tay AI was Tay AI kind of got trained by 4chan and became somewhat of a Nazi and was promptly shut down. Tried to bring it back. Surprise, 4chan won again, and they shut it down finally for its ever rest.
Too many human beings are gonna.
But
we can't let the trainers beat people.
That's how do you have AI that trains AI that doesn't make biased AI? Because you don't.
Yeah, you don't. It's like the same thing. Like every time that there's there was this for a while there was this emphasis on letting the internet or a collection group of people vote on ideas.
Voting vote
face. And imagine the person who's like, this is a great idea. This is going to really boost our engagement with our community. And they're so excited, and they get the results, and it's voting McVoteface, and they're like, I think I'm just going to become a pig farmer, and I'm just going to work out in the fields, because people are going to ruin everything. So I had to put guardrails around the people too.
I think so. Also, there were things like they didn't have locks for if the same IP or MAC address can vote as many times as it wants.
Oh, if that's just,
you could just refresh your page and just vote.
That's lazy engineering. Right then, that sounds like it was doomed to fail in that case. If you had such egregious lacks in your I don't even say security, but just your implementation, you're going to have a bad time, right? For sure.
But yeah. Well, you had one more interesting. We were talking about music and being an artist.
Right.
You had AI that does music?
So no, this doesn't produce music or generate music, but it was, again, let me preface this because I think the story is important here. I am very rarely excited by new technology, because, you and I have both been working technology long enough now where everything is is like an iteration of other things. So we're growing, expanding, but it's not like ChatGPT is a good example of like an OMG moment for a lot of people, right? There's this piece of software called MOISES, MOISES, don't have like noises, but MOISES. Yeah. And it is an app for musicians.
Okay.
And you feed it a music file, like an MP3 or something like that. And this is a phone app that runs on Android and iOS. And you feed it this audio file, music file, and using AI, it breaks that audio file into multiple tracks. And it is able to, and I'm not kidding. I'll put an example in the video here where I used one of my old band songs, right?
Okay.
From a band I was in a long time ago, and it breaks down the vocal track, the guitar track, the bass track, and the drum track, and it broke them down, and then you can individually play them or remove them from the song, and you can listen to them by themselves. And when I say that it is it breaks my brain in a way that I cannot understand how, if you feed something a mixed music file, like truly, like an example of my band, like I didn't feed it a multi-track session from 11 years ago. I fed it a mixed MP3 that was 10 years old, and I put it in there, and it gave me the drum track and my vocal track and the guitar and the bass. And when you play it,
And it was pretty clear, if I remember correctly. It was like they just pulled out all the guitar, and it was just the guitar. You didn't hear any like skips or any like fuzziness.
There's some teeny weeny things where you're like, okay, it had a hard time there, but something that is able to blow apart something that is mixed as a singular, it's like, if we take, it's the equivalent of taking like 5 cans of paint, pouring them into one big container, mixing up so you have this brown sludge, and then feeding it back to a paint machine that is able to separate all the colors again. And you're like, how is that even possible? It's so cool and amazing and terrifying, because that's the kind of black magic that like scares me. Like, what is even real anymore?
That's interesting, because like I know songs are licensed, and like you can sample someone's music. Just done a lot in like rap and EDM and stuff like that. But if I let's say I take one of Jimi Hendrix's guitar solos, and put a song in there, ripped out the guitar solo, and threw it into a song of my own, is that okay?
That's like that's a sample.
Right? Is it if I take his whole guitar solo? Because sample has a time. I know sample has like a specific time you have to stay under.
Right.
Same with like if you play music on YouTube, you have 2 or 3 seconds before it goes off. That's the same idea as like, oh, I just took a whole guitar solo from Jimi Hendrix, and then I threw some 808s and some other beats behind it.
Yeah, dude, it's
great.
It
made a new song, but did I make a new song if Jimi Hendrix is taking my guitar solo? I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I think that that application, who it's focused on is like a consumer, is not for it's for people who want to like be the instrument in that song. Like, let's say you want to play the guitar part for Chop Suey in System of a Down, right?
Yeah.
You just throw that song in there, and you cut out the guitar track, and now you sit down with your headphones in, and you aux in your guitar, and now you are the guitar, and you can do whatever you want, and everyone else is there. You got Serge Tankian just going, and he's screaming, and the drums are there, and the bass is there, and you're just like, oh my God, look at me, I'm that person. And that in and of itself is worth the money for it, because my passion is to like play drums as that's my old hobby. I grew up as a drummer. And so I will take songs, and I will, instead of playing along with the drummers, now I'm the drummer. Pull it out. I'm the drummer now. Just look at me. I'm the drummer now. And so it's kind of like this, it's amazing that you get that sort of thing. Yeah. The implication of what you're talking about, being able to export that, and now you can put that into your stuff. You could still call it a sample maybe, but it is in and of itself not just a sample. It's the whole work, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't know, like if I let's say I take my song that has the guitar from Jimi Hendrix and the different beats, but I upload it to YouTube, will the algorithm pick it up?
Oh man,
that's a good question.
If we didn't have an established YouTube channel, I would do it. And maybe that's just for Grin. Just make a temporary YouTube channel and just feed it.
Yeah,
just one track, just one part of it, and see if it catches it.
Even if you made like a track that didn't make any sense, like let's just say you took a bunch of 808s and then guitar solos and just loaded them up there. I don't know. Would it care? Like would one of the record companies come knocking on your door, like take this down? Like
that's it. I mean, that all comes down to Google's or YouTube's ability to detect that the song is copyrighted, and then that copyright entity has to be able to be connected into that where they can go, this is
and like I know there's a guy I used to follow on YouTube who would take songs that were of this, I think it's the same key or the same tempo, I forget which one, but basically they matched enough that you could stuff them together and create certain parts and you get a whole song out of it.
Right.
But YouTube would freak out and go, well, you have, you played 5 seconds of this song, then DMCA immediately.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that makes sense. That I've seen some of that guy's work. It's incredible stuff.
And it's really cool stuff. It's just like, is it his own song? You can go back and forth, because I know like Kanye West uses samples from other things. Daft Punk has stuff.
Well, I mean, that goes all the way back to like there were lawsuits way back in the day when sampling was becoming popular, right? So, we'll
have to see. I mean, that clearly is a like more niche AI thing than generating an image, generating text.
But it fits in here in the sense that we're talking about technologies now that are able to do things so far above and beyond what we would expect technology to do.
Yeah.
That I mean, we live in the future. We live in the past in a lot of ways, but we live in the future in a lot of the ways too. And this is one of those ways you're just like, I can't understand. So that's, it's still, I'm still amazed. Still, I'm sitting here like, and this was like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 months ago that I found that app amusing, but I'm still just like, oh my gosh, I still can't believe that they can do that. Yeah, so much. So yeah, dude. I mean, that's been we've been at this for a while. So
yeah, I think it's a good spot to call it on this one. I want to know what everyone else thinks. Like,
yeah,
and like, grant you, we're not AI experts, so
of course, we're just tech correct. Just talking. Yeah.
If you got anything wrong,
tell us we're all wrong, and like, well, actually, make sure you push your glasses up when you actually, you guys don't know anything. And like, well, you're kind of right, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was like, but what do you all think? Like, is this worth it, or should we be heading to the hills? Should I go start my farm down in Tillamook Woods and make sure I'm away from everyone because I need to tighten my tinfoil hat because the robots are coming in?
Yeah, the robots are coming again.
Or is this, a new golden future where people can be creative in all sorts of ways?
And we want to know exactly what you guys think of this, what we're doing here. This kind of new idea that Brand and I have to like sit down and talk about specific tech topics and produce maybe a podcast off of it, throw it as a long form VOD. So get down those comments or let us know what you think, because we would love to have you.